So I've just toggled the grid on there. I use an 8 pixel baseline grid, which is like really helpful for alignment. Also helpful for like multiplication and stuff like that, and it's sort of recommended, an 8 pixel baseline grid. So I always start with that, and to toggle it on and off, it's Command G or Control G. And yeah, so what we're doing now, we're just setting like the gradient stops that we want to sort of like try and mimic as closely as possible the button that they've got there in Candy Crush Saga. Just going to add a stroke on the inside. It looks like it's probably about like a 2 pixel stroke, which will be fine. And then we'll select a gradient ramp again. Most of my work is just like gradient ramps. It's quite funny actually, but I guess that's what you get when you're trying to simulate, light and stuff like that over, 2D objects. But yeah, so that's that bit. This bit's a bit too harsh there, that fall off. And then we'll create a little drop shadow. Usually the default's fine, but let's just up that a little bit, just so there's a little bit more contrast there. Reduce the blur and just offset the y-axis ever so slightly. Okay, so that's cool. I'm going to rename this to button base, or base button. Yeah, why not? And so that's kind of like the main button shape. It's sort of like a lozenge, isn't it? But there's some high areas of reflection, giving it that sort of 3D effect. So what we'll do is we'll duplicate this. So that's Command D, and this is going to act as the mask. So let's do button mask. There we go. We'll remove the settings. We don't need any of that, but we will need the fill actually. So let's just put that back to default, which is 1. Okay, cool. So we're going to access the pen, which is up there, or you can press P on the keyboard, and that will give us access to the curves here, which is what we need to get that effect. I find working with the pen tool quite fiddly. I'm not sure about you, but yeah, it's there's definitely an art to it. It takes a little bit of time. Right, so we've created our base curve there. You can dial it further if you want, just by dragging these handles around, getting some nice symmetry if you wanted to. But part of the fun of this type of UI is it being slightly more organic. And then we're going to mask it. So we'll select the mask we created earlier, and then we'll select the curve, right click, and then select User's Mask. I will have to apologize. There's a bike room downstairs where they create these like really cool custom motorbikes. It sounds like they've just fired one of them up. So yeah, and also the audio I have is quite poor at the moment. I've just moved into a new studio, which happens to be directly above a bike room, and it's a little bit noisy sometimes. So until I get my soundproofing in, hopefully that'll be okay for you to sort of endure. Okay, so that's the highlight. Then we'll press T on the keyboard, or you can access the text tool at the top there, and we'll write end game. And the font that we're using is Funky Dory, which is a free font, I believe, that I found online, and it was one of the closest matches to what they use in their game. And there's a few different sort of like stylistic sets you can use. I sort of found like this one, which is the first option, sort of matches Candy Crush Saga the best. There's no overweights, unfortunately. You could probably add a stroke to it to make it a bit more chunky, so like a 0.2 or something. But yeah, it's up to you really. I'll probably just do that because it looks relatively chunky, doesn't it? And then add a little drop shadow won't fiddle with this too much, but yeah, something like that. And let's just increase that to say 50. Okay, that's looking kind of cool. The base button has also like a little highlight. So I'll create a inner shadow, but in this case, we'll treat it as an inner glow. And we're just going to offset the Y ever so slightly. I'm going to increase the brightness or the opacity to 50. And there we go. I'm going to turn that grid off. I don't really need it at the moment. But you can sort of see, like, just quite quickly, we managed to get a pretty similar looking button there. I'm going to do another inner shadow. Now, I've kind of got like a bad habit of just like stacking effects. And sometimes if you do too many, especially, you know, heavy ones, it's going to really, you know, slow Figma down. So you just have to be careful with that. Let me just skim through these a little bit. There you go, that's quite a nice effect, isn't it? Let's offset it on the Y, just so we get a little bit of the effect at the bottom. Just go back to this, crank it up a bit so we can see what we're doing a little bit more. There you go. Yeah, something like that. And then we'll drop it back down to say 15. Cool, yeah, that's looking nice. So that's the basis of the button. Another thing it has is this little highlight. And we'll create that by creating an ellipse. That's O on the keyboard, or you can access it from this menu up here. I'm just going to rotate that on its side. I'm just going to pop it in that top corner. There's a gradient that they use across, which is quite basic. It's just sort of coming from, what is it, actually the highlights coming from the bottom left, which kind of doesn't make sense. We'll do it from here, because that sort of makes sense. You know, you've got, when you're thinking about the light, you've got the light coming straight down, which is what they're simulating. And so the highest point of that shine will probably be at the top. Cool, that's looking pretty good. Didn't really take us too long to get there. Let me just dial this down a little bit. It's a bit too heavy. Just got to sort of get it right, looking right. Yeah, it's looking nice. Cool, let's crack. Put the grid back on. Let's just align this. Turn the grid off. That is not aligned. There you go. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, cool. So we're on to the next bit now, which is the dialogue. Now this is going to be a little bit fiddly, but yeah, just bear with me and we'll get through it. I remember when I did it last time around, the candy cane was a little bit time consuming. It seemed to take a bit of time, and you know, when you're setting up those types of gradients, it will anyway. But essentially what it was made out of a stroke which had a style on it, and it was this starburst effect that I created. And the starburst effect was created using, let me break the link there and I'll show you, an angular gradient. And it's essentially constructed of these stops that sort of alternate between black and white, essentially, and that creates the candy effect, or the candy cane effect that you can see around here. So go ahead and do that. And yeah, and then make sure you save it as well. So when you've created it, make sure you go here and on create style, you just click that plus, and then you'll be able to reuse it next time. Okay, cool. So it's looking pretty good. So what we're trying to do is, if we look at our original, we want to get this sort of like 3D effect. But first we need to like colorize it. So if we dialog base, just rename this, then we'll duplicate it. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to add let's do 8 pixels. In fact, what was that a minute ago? 16. Yeah, 16. Slightly chunkier than theirs, but it doesn't really matter too much. And then I'm gonna select like the mid pink that they use and just drop it down a bit. Okay, I'll remove that fill, we don't need it. And then I'm just gonna sort of tweak and play about with blending mode, see if there's anything that is getting me an interesting effect. The problem is, and I've noticed it again, is like the contrast is quite high between the rays. So yeah, it's probably needs to be a little bit more subtle, to be honest. So if I take this and just lower that contrast a little bit, it might help. We'll do an inner glow. We'll set this to overlay. Let's do about 60. The inner glow needs to be 0, and then we're just gonna sort of check that out a bit. And let's just dial this color so there's a little bit more pink in there. And toggle that grid off. It's looking okay. I think we've lost a little bit of saturation at the moment, but we can bring it back. There's this element here when you add the shine that sort of brings back a bit of the saturation as well. So we'll do this. There you go, something like that. And for the dialogue fill, we need to do that midsection. So we'll sample that. It also looks like there's an inner glow as well. There we go. And set that to 0. Increase the spread quite a lot. And the blur is really quite soft, isn't it? See that light pink? It's quite soft. And what we're going to do is let's sample what appears to be close to the brightest part. So something like that. That's looking fine. This bit's interesting. Let's see if we can do that with an inner glow as well. Or in that case, because of the color, it'd be an inner shadow. But it's the same technique, you know, you're accessing it in the same way. We need to increase that spread, reduce the blur a little bit, and then let's offset it on the X a little bit like that. Something like that will do it, won't it? And then let's see if we can get a little bit of that purple through. And then if we increase it, let's bring in a bit more of the pink through. That's fine. If we sample that color and then remove the blending mode. There you go. Something like that's sort of relatively close, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of this is just like really refining and sort of tweaking to get the right look. And it seems like there's a little bit at the top as well, which this approach isn't letting us do. But if we you know, just do like another inner shadow, we should be able to get a little ridge at the top as well. Just lower that blur, then offset it a little bit. You know, you could do it like that if you want. I'm going to leave it for now. Yeah, it's looking pretty cool. I'm just going to increase the saturation of this ever so slightly. There you go. Sweet. Add a little drop shadow to the not that one, sorry, the base. And this will just help sell that sort of 3D effect. It's hard to sort of see in that image what the drop shadow fall off is like, but let's go for something like this. And there. It's looking quite nice. going to do now is, that's cool. So this is the inner effects we've got of the buttons. Let's do a quick cleanup. Just group those, and then we know what we're dealing with. Cool. Right, so what we'll do next is the shines. Now, Figma has a really cool feature, which is it creates live paths, even when you've masked them or Boolean operated them and stuff like that, and that's really helpful. So what we'll do is we'll create a mask, and then what we're going to do is we'll halve that, but 16-ish. And bring this over. Right, so what are we doing? I want to create this effect, which is the edge highlight. So I'll rename this for highlight. I'm going to select the mask first and then the object that's going to be masked, and that's really important to remember. And there we go. So the highlight is cool, yeah. And just going to get that in the right position. Gonna wiggle the radius ever so slightly, and I'm going to adjust the mask. Actually, I'll leave the mask where it is, but I'm going to adjust this. There we go. We've got a sort of highlight going on, which is kind of cool. We'll keep the shadow. Actually, we do need that, don't we, for this effect here? But what we'll do is see if we can do a bit of a burn or something on it. And actually, we might need to remove that and add it higher up, otherwise it won't be seen. There it is. Okay, cool. So we've got a drop shadow. I'm just going to select a color that gives us that sort of hot pink. There it is. Let's drop that a little bit. And let's see. We've got a highlight, which is obviously really intense. I'm going to drop that down. Okay. And what I'm going to do, yeah, that's fine. Bring the mask. No, not the mask. Yep, that type of thing. I'm gonna do this. So this is gonna give us a really interesting effect. So I'm gonna draw a box. I'm gonna pop it next to the highlight, and then I'm gonna subtract that box from the highlight and see what it's done. It's created that little edge there, but it's still live. You can still tweak it as much as you want. But the reason I did that is because if we now wiggle the radius, we get that nice curve, which is a cool thing about Figma. Is you can't do this in any other software, I don't think. And then you can drag it around and get the desired effect that you want. I'm going to leave it where it is because I think that's kind of looking quite cool. But I will just tweak that that shadow a little bit. It's just a bit too intense. Okay, cool. And it's essentially the same effect for that top area too. So if I think it's Shift H, and that gives you a reflection, or Shift V, and then that would do it vertically. So Shift H, yeah, and then Shift V. There you go. So that gives us sort of what we're looking for there, which is this part of the reflection. But we are going to have to, tweak it all a little bit. So we drag this up ever so slightly, adjust the radius there. there, something like that. That's nice. And then just bring that mask up. Well, not the mask, but the subtraction. Yeah, and let's just see what else we've got going on. Cool. What's the mask doing? The mask is fine. But we've got a little bit of an issue here. Let me just remind myself what that is. Okay, that's just, yeah. So can we tweak that and just drag it so it follows that radius there? There we go. Okay, cool. It's looking quite nice. Man, I don't know about you, but that green is really blowing my eyes out. So let's just neutralize it a little bit and then bring the green back later on for the screenshot. Don't know why I'm using green, but yeah. Okay, cool. It's looking good. Yeah, let's tweak that ever so slightly. It's not that hard, is it? And it's a bit darker. There we go. It's looking good. So as you can sort of see, like the effect is sort of getting there. The new addition, this bit here, is actually, it's like it falls off, doesn't it? It's like a soft, like gradient. So I wonder if there's like, if you could do like a layer blur and then, will that work? No, it doesn't seem to work. But you might be able to, if you take that, and just add a linear gradient to it. So just grab that handle. Oh damn, I always do it on the wrong layer. Yeah, this is this guy. You have to do it at the top, you know, when you've masked and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it. Here we are. Do like a radial. Let's just get those handles, and so we can actually see what we're doing. There you go. Let's reverse these. Tell me in the comments below if there's a quicker way of flipping these two stoppers. I have no idea how to do it, but it would be good to know if it's possible. You know, like you can in Photoshop, you've got a, you know, a quick sort of handle toggle that you can just, yeah, flip around. Okay, needs to be a bit longer maybe. Yeah, that type of thing will do. I'm going to leave that bit there, and you know, you can continue to dial this as much as you want, really. I'll probably leave it. Just see if I can blend it a little bit better. Yeah, something like that. And one thing I've noticed is like this top corner is quite a lot brighter, so we'll just have to handle that. And the way we'll do it is we'll just put another stroke on top and do like a linear fill there. We're going to set this. There we go. So that's the top corner. This is the bottom. Now actually, we'll do it a different way. Let's select the base and we'll do an inner shadow. Of course, I don't know why I didn't think of that before. And then just offset that. Let's try and get some nice high contrast. Crank it up to 100 so we know what we're dealing with. Something like that will do. Yeah, it's looking good, right? And then we've got these little highlights here. So we'll use the pen tool for that. So I'm going to zoom right in. And with the pen tool, you're just going to create a little stroke like that. And then into the settings. Let's see where it is. Where are you? There we are. Round and round. Okay, cool. So that's that. And what I'll do, I'll flatten this. Actually, no, it's not flatten, it's outline stroke. And I'm just gonna hop in a bit closer. Just edit it a little bit. Make it a bit more interesting. It's kind of tricky to do organic work if you've got your grid on, but feel free to turn that off if you don't want it on. And then in the same way as we did here, we're just going to do another gradient. There you go, following a similar sort of direction. There you go. That's cool. Just that, it seems to stop a bit abruptly there. Cool, it's looking nice. It's not exactly the same, but yeah, I just showing you the effect really more than anything. And then this gradient is, well, it's actually following probably the correct light source, which is cool. Yeah, it's just gonna fall off that way. Looking good. Let's see. That in the shadow is a bit too harsh. Let's do 60. Let's bring that blur down a bit. There you go. Don't want it to sort of interfere too much. And then there's a little ridge here, which you can also do. You could probably do it in the same layer as you did this one, which is a rectangle, or you could use an ellipse, it's up to you. Actually, let's use an ellipse. So that's O on the keyboard, and crank that up. Yeah, do an effect, just do a quick layer blur there so it just softens it. Put it down to 2. Yeah, but there's so what we'll do is I'll look at a little Boolean operation here. So we're going to select that rectangle and the ellipse here, and we'll do subtract. There we go. Looks quite nice. Just zoom right in. Let's make sure it's in a good spot. Cool. You can dial that further. Little 1, slightly softer, but it's got quite a nice ridge to it now. But yeah, so that's kind of like essentially how you would go about creating the dialogue aspect. And in the next section, like I'll work on the clouds here, and I'll show you a few techniques on how to do that. So this should be quite fun to do. It's a couple of ways of doing it. So you can select your ellipse and you can like block out the clouds and then sort of flatten them if you wanted to. It's one way of doing it. Or you could use the pen tool and just sort of like freestyle it. Using the pen tool, you're going to get like more organic lines, and that's kind of like nice for this type of sort of style, really. So yeah, I'll quickly blast through this, and then I'll like show you in a moment like how to sort of like refine, that type of stuff, how to refine the curves and everything like that. So. Okay, cool. So we're back. I've just like roughly like marked out the lines and stuff like that. And now it's kind of like a case of, you know, just refining the anchor points and stuff like that. And if you want to sort of wiggle a handle on its own, you're pressing Alt and then you're clicking on, you know, the handle that you want to move. Okay, that's cool. And this one. Okay, good. Let's remove that stroke. It's a little bit distracting. It's not what we need. Let's sample that blue color. And like, obviously, like, this is way too big, so to scale it, you want to press V on your keyboard, and then that will allow you to sort of scale it to the size that you want it. I'm just going to rotate it there. You know, as we freestyled it, I wasn't too precious on any of that type of stuff at that point. One thing I do want to do is I just want to refine, you know, this bit here. It's kind of like one of the key features of the cloud. So we're just, for starters, trying to pick up the handles, which can be quite fiddly at times. And we're just getting that weight right. You know, as that sort of curve happens, the weight is going to really sort of like taper off. We're going to remove this node by healing it, which is Shift and the Delete key. So at this point, I'm pressing Alt again, and I'm just, you know, dragging these handles and getting that weight distribution right. You know, so it sort of like flips around nicely. Cool, that's looking fine, right? Don't need to spend too much time there. But you get the idea. You know, theirs spins around quite a lot, but we don't need to. And then one of the cool things about this is, like, you know, you can change the radius and it just takes that taper off. So it's quite nice. All right. Then what we'll do is we shall, let's duplicate this. In fact, let's call this cloud base. Otherwise, we'll just lose track. Okay, so we've just duplicated the stroke. I'm going to remove that and just select the color here. So what's that? It looks like it's probably like a 3 pixel stroke or something like that. Actually not. 3 is a bit too heavy. And that's essentially the cloud, right? It's quite easy when you break it down. You know, you start to see things in this smaller sort of like fragmented way. Which is like really important in this job. You need to be able to, like, once you've built a concept, you need to be able to understand how it breaks down into smaller components that, you know, make up the object that you build in the game. So I'll go and create the shadow here. I'll keep it quite basic because we've already seen some of these techniques, but if you want to, you know, sort of change the direction so you don't have these, you know, reflected anchor point handles, just press Shift and then click, and then that changes the direction for you. Quite a handy little tip there. And we're just going around and we're just creating this shadow to give the clouds a little bit of a 3D effect. And there's another one here. Once again, I'm not going to be too precious at this point. There you go. And also doing it at this zoom level isn't too helpful for me. So I should probably zoom in after this. Cool. Let's commit that. Let's remove that little radius that we've inherited. And let's do a fill. We'll select the color it is. It's looking nice. Okay, cool. So we'll select a mask, and it's really important that these two, like the mask is below the fingers masking, and then user's mask there. Cool. And then once again, let's get this font in place, bring it to the front. There is a shortcut for that. Actually, we need to take it out of the group first because we copied it. we'll select the color. And for the stroke, which is, if you remember, that slightly thicker effect there, we'll select the color for that too. And we'll repurpose this shadow, which just softens it, makes it look like the, you know, the clouds are in the text is in the clouds. So that's that aspect, which is cool. So we're definitely getting there. The next bit is the handle. Or the holder. And in here we have an ellipse. Zoom right in for this, just be easier. Let's adjust. In fact, let's do it one by one. There we go. Probably a width of 10, so yeah, that makes sense. Nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to subtract these two shapes and leave a little hole. And we're just going to command or control clicking. That gives us this little curving option, which allows us to curve the strokes. So select a color and go for that. And the cool thing, like I've mentioned it in the past, is Figma, everything's live. So you weren't happy with that radius, you can just hop in and tweak it. And that's the same for this as well. You can just, you know, drag it and make it chunky or not. Drag these nodes in. It's looking quite good. Next step would be to do the little stroke here. There you go, that's probably a 2 pixel stroke. And do a little gradient along it. Cool. And I'm going to worry too much about the color, but I think it's like a goldy color. So we'll just roll with that for now. There you go. We do want a round corner at the bottom. Cool, it's looking good. And probably like if the finishing touch for the general build is like these little guys. And these are just like, you know, where it's been folded over, I guess. It's kind of cool. We can soften them up a little bit if you want, just by doing something like that, or maybe even 0.2, like so it's really quite small. I'm just going to rotate this around. Okay, it's looking good. So that's like the general approach you could take, you know, when building this type of UI. The next step would be to like build the other elements, so the icons and stuff like that, and we'll jump into doing that next. Something that's quite important I did want to show is how you could create the other bits, like the reusable components within Figma. So let's call this button, and then what we'll do is we'll right click on it and we shall create a component, and everything is going to sort of derive from that now. So we've got this, and you know, we can, you know, sort of create duplicates of this as much as we want, and then as soon as we make a change at the source, it has that global effect there, which is kind of cool. What we want to use it for at the moment is to create these smaller ones without having to like recreate a button, and it's kind of essentially as easy as doing that. But you notice we've got some issues like the text, and you know, we've got this little highlight that's getting squashed. So if we undo that, and then what I'll do is I'll take the text out of it, and then I'll just paste it as a separate thing. There are ways to, you know, sort of, you know, integrate text into buttons and, you know, doing it properly with components. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it like that, so I can sort of focus on this. And what we need to do on the master component, we need to find that highlight that we created that we didn't rename. highlight. And I just want to draw your attention over to here, which is constraints. Now, constraints are so cool. They're so like awesome. You should really like deep dive into these. What they do is they allow you to anchor graphics or stretch graphics to specific parts of the component it lives in. So in this case, we want this highlight to live in the top left as we're looking at the screen. And to do that, you just tap these two little lines here. And then what happens is when you now start to, drag, it doesn't get stretched, which is really cool, especially for what we want here. And now we have like this reusable button. We've just saved ourselves tons of work of like recreating, the time and time again. And another cool thing is colorization is like really easy. So on the component, anything higher than the master you can customize. But if you want a global change, then you would change that purely on the master, like I showed you a minute ago. And because Figma expose all of the selection colors here, it allows us to, sort of quickly, sort of refine these colors and stuff like that, and, get that red effect that we're going for this close button. So you can sort of see within, seconds we've customized, which is cool. One thing we'll do is we'll start looking at creating a couple of these icons now. So what I'll do, I'm going to zoom right in just because icon creation is hard to do really far out. You're just going to, use that pen tool, create your shape there, fill it in, and then, if you want to refine further, you can. You might want to sort of soften that fall off. I won't worry too much about that now. And then I'm going to duplicate it, so Command C, Command V. I'm going to flip this, so vertically. There we go, something like that. I can't remember which way around they've done it actually. Oh, they've done it that way, slightly different. But you'll get the idea. Just do horizontal, there we go. So you got something like that going on, which is essentially the same sort of icon. Then we'll colorize these. And we're just going to select from there. Cool. Let me just add a tiny bit of variation by just dragging that in and just adjusting. There you go. Those points. One thing you might notice is they've got the little highlight here and the icon sits behind it. We can easily do that, but it just requires a little bit more sort of like preparation. So I'll show you how to do it. So let's create our little drop shadow. That just helps sort of separate it, doesn't it? Then I'll Control X, which is like cut, and then I'll go to the main button, and I'm going to paste it in here. So this will be close icon. And I'm going to turn it off for now. And let me just make sure that it's anchored to the center. And then here, there we go. It's still not showing the effect. I just need to adjust the stacking there. So it needs to go behind this one. There you go, and there you've got it. So just position that as you want. And then, as you can sort of see, these other elements all need to be cleaned up a little bit, so we'll do that quickly. Let's see what we got. We've got some highlights. Yeah, we got that. And that's cloud stuff. Cool. Right, so we've got our little dialogue. And now, essentially, what we want to do, or what you can go on to do, is create the other icons. And to do that, I'll run through it with you. It's going to take the same object here. Let's turn off this close icon because we don't need it at this point. And we want this little device icon. So let's quickly create the device icon. And we use this little template that I had set up from last time. Let's make sure that's up to 30. And yeah, in a good central position. Cool. Let's add some rounded corners and a screen. Yeah, it's looking good. It's the same amount. Yep. We're going to subtract that. Okay, and press O for the ellipse. I'm going to do the same, which is subtract. P for pen. And we're going to hold in Shift. We're going to create 3 peaks just to match what they've got going on there. And we're going to get this a similar thickness to what we've got there. I think 3's relatively decent. And let's just round those corners off. And shall we round the peaks off as well? There you go. It's looking good. And then let's duplicate that, flip it horizontally. There we go. Cool. And then just colorize this. Colorize the device. There you go. We've just created a cool little icon. So this will be, was it like haptics maybe? I don't actually know what it is, but it could be haptics, vibration, something like that. Sweet. So let's copy that. And once again, in your master, paste it in the correct location. As you can sort of see, we've got 3 buttons, so we've had 3 duplications. So just set the position to center, and then hide it for now. In fact, bring it back. Let's position it nicely and then hide it. It's just going to be easier for us. Then on this button, we have our haptics, which is cool. You might want to scale it down ever so slightly. So back to the master, press V, and then you scale. There you go. And that gets you your icon. Let's turn that back off. Now we've got what we need, which is cool. Now, no doubt this has a little shadow on it. Yeah, it does. So let's go to the close icon. Copy properties, I think it is. Let's see what happens. And then paste properties. Yeah, and that copied over our shadow. So we've got that consistent shadow now. And then I guess the finishing touches would be to just dial these ever so slightly to match the colors up here. So if we just select that and then select this, yeah, that's cool. And then for the main gradient, we're going for that sort of highlight. We're going for the mid-tone about there, and then we're going for that shadow. And I think there might be an inner glow that we'll need to dial. No, it seems okay actually. Cool. And there you have it. We've got you know, an icon and another button with, like, you know, relative ease, right? It didn't take long to do that at all, and you know, you can just keep duplicating that, keep adding icons to your master, and yeah, and go from there really. So yeah, that's essentially how I went about creating the original Candy Crush Saga UI for the speed build that I posted, and you know, there's always variations in the way you can do it or the way it's produced, and it largely comes down to time. But this certainly like shows you or gives you a little bit of an insight into how you can use Figma to create these types of UIs.